So, at the time of this recording, it is a very exciting time for those who are trying to sell their homes. Interest rates are still very low, and home values are soaring, and then homes are flying off the market. Like, as soon as they get up for sale, they're getting sold. It's going to be interesting to see what the near future brings. By the time more people are watching this video, who knows? But for now, the housing market is hot. So I imagine that at least one of you was probably thinking about either buying a house or selling and buying right now. So I'm hoping that this video will give you a little bit of an idea about some of the math involved as you go through the process. As far as getting approval and trying to figure out your payments and down payments and all that good stuff. So hopefully this will give you a little bit of insight. It can be a little more, it can be more complicated. There can be more details involved, but I just wanted to give you like the basics of the math behind all that paperwork that you'll be signing, and that you will hopefully have a real estate attorney with you to look over. But I digress. All right, home mortgages. I actually love this unit because I love the way payment math works, especially if you are allowed to pay it off early. That's really fun. That is a little piece of advice. Make sure that your mortgage statement allows you to pay it off early without penalties. Because that's the thing. Sometimes there's clauses where you're not allowed to pay it off early without paying a penalty. So, anyways, okay, moving on. What is a mortgage? A mortgage is a long-term loan used in buying a home. It works basically the same way a car loan works, except a car loan's usually a lot less time and lower interest. The interest is different. You end up paying less interest. It's a much smaller principal, but the way the math is done is very similar. The agreement is that the buyer will pay the difference between the down payment and sale price with interest over a given amount of time. Very frequently, mortgages are either 15 years or 30 years. There have been changes to that. Sometimes nowadays you can find them for 10 years, 25 years. Out in California, they had to start 40-year mortgages, and I believe now 50-year mortgages because of how expensive houses are in certain areas, like in San Francisco. People need to buy houses, but they can't afford the payments if it's too short of a mortgage. So they take out a longer mortgage so they can have lower affordable payments. But over that time, you're gonna pay back the principal, like whatever your loan amount was, plus your interest. If the buyer defaults, then the property is taken back and sold by the lending institution to pay the debt. That is called a foreclosure. Not the best thing to go through, but it happens. So they take it back and sell it, and then they hope that it helps to pay off the debt. Sometimes it pays off more than the debt, sometimes it pays off the amount of the debt, sometimes it's less. And what happens in that, again, you'll need an attorney to help you navigate that process. Okay. Some popular mortgages include adjustable rate loans and conventional loans. We're going to focus on conventional loans. I'm personally not a fan of adjustable rate loans. They have their uses, but I'm not personally a fan, and I'm not going to emphasize them. Your book talks about them a little bit. You can read about it a little bit in the book. It has like not even 2 whole pages devoted. So it's not a huge thing that's being stressed in there. And most of you probably that have purchased a house or are going to purchase a house will go with the conventional loan. So we'll focus on that. And the conventional loan is more like how your typical like auto loan would be too. In a conventional loan, they figure out your payment. You have an interest rate that remains fixed for the life of the loan, doesn't change, unlike the adjustable rate loan. And then the amount of payment is fixed also for the life of the loan. Whereas in an adjustable rate loan, your payment can change as the interest rate changes. All right, when you go to buy a house, they go through this whole process. If you're going to take out a mortgage, you go through this whole process of making sure you qualify. I remember when we bought our house, the very first thing we did was get like a rough estimate of how much home we could afford. And that gave us a number to talk to with our real estate folks. When we talked to real estate agent, they had that rough numbers. They knew not to show us houses that were more expensive than that because they knew we wouldn't qualify for a loan anyways. So commonly, like at the very beginning, they'll ask you for like a rough salary, and they'll take that annual gross income and multiply it by 3 to see what that maximum possible home price that you'll be able to afford. So, you know, if your annual gross income is $50,000, oops, and they multiply that by 3, then they're going to say that you can at most afford a $150,000 house. They won't show you houses that are $200,000 because it's pointless. So that's something that they'll do initially. And then when you actually find a house that you want to buy and you start going through the official paperwork process of trying to get approved for a loan, the bank will have some percentage of your adjusted monthly income that they'll say, okay, we think you can afford a monthly payment no more than this percentage of your adjusted monthly income. And when we say adjusted monthly income, they're looking at your monthly income minus your regular monthly payments to other things. And they're saying, well, no more. They have their set percentage, you know, something like 25% or 38%, you know, whatever they want to set. And they'll say, let's just make sure your house doesn't work out to more than that. And if it doesn't, then, and as long as your credit checks out and everything else checks out, then you can be on your way towards approval. All right, let me work out an example, like from the book, that works with this. There is a family named the Chings, and they have a gross monthly income of $4,100. But prior to buying the house, they bought a boat, and they have 18 remaining boat payments. Of $505. And the bank is going to look at that and say, you only have 18 left, but we can't qualify you for monthly payment. We can't look at your income and say that $505 is available right now. So their adjusted monthly income is going to be minus that 505. I'm going to put that in my calculator real quick. Even though I could do it in my head, I don't feel like trusting my head right now. It's been a long day. So adjusted monthly income would be $3,595. And then the bank might have some kind of a particular rule. This bank says that they will allow, the bank allows a payment less than 28%. So this particular bank sets it at 28% of the adjusted monthly income. So they would take 28% of $3,595. So 0.28 times $3,595, and you get $1,006.60. Okay, so their total house payment cannot exceed that amount, that $1,006.60. Now they're looking at a house, and this particular house, they're looking at a $275,000 mortgage. And this will be for 20 years at 9%. So after their down payment and all that, they're going to be taking out $275,000 loan. If they take out a $275,000 loan for 20 years at 9%, the monthly the mortgage payment will be. We're going to talk later about how we can find this mortgage payment, but for now, we can tell you it's going to be $2,474.25. But the mortgage payment doesn't just include paying back the loan. I know mine had an escrow account involved. Not all bank loans require an escrow account, but my bank went ahead and not only did I have to pay the payment, like you have here, the $2,474.25, but I also had to pay extra to make sure to include my property taxes and my homeowner's insurance. So I would pay this money to the bank, and they would put it in the escrow account, and they would directly pay my property taxes and my homeowner's insurance for me. I could pick what homeowner's insurance company I wanted, but they would send the amounts directly to them. If they had collected not enough, then the next year they gave me options, and usually I would just opt to increase the escrow payment the following year so that it would get absorbed over the next year. If they over-collected from me, they would pay the payment off to the company, and then you would usually opt to get a refund check for that year. Usually it was an overpayment. Usually they overestimated how much things were going to cost on my insurance. The taxes, on the other hand, I mean, they had an idea, but once in a while those were a little off too. I don't think I ever had an overage. I think we always got a refund check because they overestimated every time. But not everybody has an escrow account. If you don't have an escrow account, then you pay that stuff directly. So, but you have to have that stuff. You have to have, like, especially with certain mortgages, they require you to make sure you carry insurance and everything. You have to pay your property taxes. Otherwise, eventually you'll get your property taken from you because they want those taxes and they'll sell it to pay off your taxes. Anyways, so the taxes and insurance on this house are $425 monthly. I don't remember mine being nearly that expensive, but it all depends on where you live and everything. I was in Central Florida. I live in South Florida now, and I just saw in the paper how at least in Florida, especially South Florida, how the homeowners insurance rates are going to skyrocket very soon. And although I currently rent an apartment, that still scares me because I don't think my renter's insurance will go up, but my rent may go up because the people who own my apartment building have to pay insurance. Anyhow, enough about that. I need to not get depressed tonight thinking about that stuff. My rent down here is already insane, so I'm not sure what's going to happen. But back to this fine family. Their property taxes and homeowners insurance is that amount. So their total house payment, according in the bank size, will be the $2,474.25 plus the escrow amount, or if they pay it directly, that $425 each month. So tapping that into my calculator, that comes out to $2,899.25. So when we talked a minute ago about what the bank would approve, the bank allowed them 28% of their adjusted monthly income. The bank allowed $1,006.60 for the total housing payment. This $2,899.25 is definitely is greater than the $1,660. So when the question asks, do they qualify for this mortgage? They do not qualify for the mortgage. The bank looks at that and says, no, obviously you can't afford this. There's no way. So they would never get anywhere with trying to buy this house. It's sad but true. Okay. So a little bit more about conventional loans. I mentioned a down payment earlier. A down payment is a certain amount paid by the buyer to the seller before the mortgage loan is granted. A common amount is 20%, but it can vary. When we bought our house, we qualified for a loan, a federal loan, where we did not have to pay a down payment. But that is rare. It had to do with being a first-time home buyer at the time period we were buying years ago, and our salaries, being teachers and all that. But usually you need to pay a down payment. So you look at this, whatever price that you end up agreeing with them for the selling price. Like they'll have a selling price, then you'll make an offer. If they agree to your offer, then you pay a down payment. It'll go directly towards the amount. I mean, when you go to buy the house, the seller's going to get their full amount, but the down payment is like what you're paying up front before you try to take out the mortgage loan. So you got to subtract that before you figure out how much your mortgage loan is going to be. Then you can also have to pay all kinds of other things. Like homeowners, like we were newbies when we did this and didn't realize just how many other things can come up. There's something called points. Those are paid at the closing when you go and sign your official documents for buying the house for your mortgage. 1 point is equal to 1% of whatever the mortgage loan amount is. And these are extra fees. They do not go towards your balance. These are extra fees that you're paying for the loan. One might be a loan origination fee charged for taking out the loan in the first place. Another might be a discount charge if you're trying to get your rate down some. You might pay that, and then in an agreement they'll do a lower interest rate. There's all kinds of things that you can have these points for. But those are something that you need to expect as part of your closing costs. We did not realize that, but thankfully they allowed the points to get rolled into the mortgage amount, so we didn't have to cough that up front. There was another thing we had to do. It was like a good faith amount, where when we put in our offer, we also paid a good faith amount to say, hey, we are serious about buying your house. So that's something you gotta think about too. Like it's not the down payment. It's a amount that to ask the seller, please don't try to sell this to somebody else before we have a chance to finish getting things done here. In between, right now and us getting to a closing, getting the bank approval and all that. So you might need to make sure you have an amount ready for that good faith. You can get it back, but you're just putting it there and basically saying, well, if we fall through and don't go through with this, you can keep this money. So this is our little guarantee that we're serious and we're going to try to go through with this. So that's another little surprise we didn't realize. So it doesn't hurt to get a really good real estate agent who will up front tell you all these things too. All right, let's do an example so that you can see maybe how some of the points and all that stuff works. We have a family named the Bells. I love that last name. They're getting a 25-year, $110,000 conventional mortgage. And 10.5% interest rate. These interest rates sound high right now because right now interest rates are historic lows. But that's about to change too. So right now, a lot of people are shopping. I say right now, as of October 14th, 2020. So if you're listening to this in the future, this may not be reality. It's just my reality right now while I record this on October 14th, 2020. And considering I live in South Florida, close to Fort Lauderdale. Okay, so 10.5%, and the house was originally The selling price was $160,000. Their monthly payment will be $1,038.60. And they're also paying 2 points at closing. So the monthly payment includes principal and interest. I think I wrote down everything about that problem. All right, so we're going to go through and look at some of these numbers and what's going on with this house. Okay, so selling price $160,000. That might not even be how much it was advertised as, because usually you'll put in an offer. Like, let's say the house was selling for $200,000 and you see some serious issues with it and you're like, you know what? I'm going to put an offer in for $160,000 as is. And they know that there's serious issues, so they might agree to that. Or it might be a very popular house. Maybe they're trying to sell it for $150,000, but you know there's other people trying to jump on it and you really want this house. So you might offer them a little more. You might offer them the $160,000. Well, these folks, the Bells family, they put in a down payment. Once they have that agreement that the selling price is $160,000, they put in a down payment at 31.25%. So you take $160,000 times 0.3125, and this tells you how much their down payment was. So let me do that real quick with my calculator. So that's $50,000. So when you go to do the mortgage amount, you gotta take the $160,000 minus the $50,000. And you get the $110,000. Okay, so they're taking out a loan of $110,000. Okay, so they roll around to closing time, and when they get to closing, they have to pay 2 points at closing. So 2 points is 2% of the mortgage amount of mortgage. So 110,000 times 0.02. That's $2,200. That $2,200 is not going to pay down their mortgage any. That's the money they're going to cough up right there at closing and say, here, this is our fees. These are our fees. Thank you very much. All right. So how much are they going to pay for this house? How much total will they pay? Well, we said that the monthly payment was $1,038.60, and this is for a 25-year mortgage. $1,038.60. So they're paying that each month for 12 months a year for 25 years. So to the bank, for those payments, they pay back $311,580. Plus, they originally paid that $50,000 down payment. So this was the bank loan. This was the down payment. And they also paid those points. That was the $2,200. So what does that come out to so far? So far that comes out to $363,780. Did they pay anything else? Well, those payments included all of that was the principal and interest. This is like directly just paying on the house. They paid the down payment and they paid the points. So the total they paid for the house was $363,780. It's pretty eye-opening, isn't it? When you look at the interest, if you don't include the points, the points are more of a fee, but I mean, in the book it might say include the points in this calculation, but I'm not going to include that right now. If you want to figure out the total interest, the bank loan was $311,580 that they paid back for that, but the original loan amount was $110,000, right? So how much did they pay back over, like how much did they pay directly to the bank there in those payments versus how much was the original loan amount? $201,580. They could have almost purchased 2 more houses for that with that interest. If you add in the points, it comes out to $203,780. That doesn't make sense though to me when you're talking about interest, because the points are an upfront fee, whereas the for like processing the loan, whereas interest is paid over the time that you have the loan. So that would be their total interest. It's pretty remarkable how much interest you pay the longer you stretch out these loans. Okay, so that's a little bit about that. Now let's start breaking down these payments. How do we know? Like I'm just spouting out these monthly payments to you, telling you, oh, this is their monthly payment. How do we know that? 2 ways we can do this. You have an amortization table. There's actually one in your current book on page 610 that you can use. Or you can use a payment formula if you want to do this by hand. The formula is how you would come up with the table. Or you can go online and there's nice little handy dandy calculators that do this for you. If we go back and revisit the Changs from earlier, if we put in their information, that was the first example we did. Remember, they were applying for a $275,000 mortgage, so I put in $275,000 as the loan amount. They were having a 9% interest rate for 20 years. They were going to pay this house back in 20 years. So I put all that information in for the loan term and everything. I did not put in property tax or insurance or HOA dues or anything like that, because I'm just trying to keep it simple. But you put that in and it automatically calculates for you your monthly payment, and it breaks it down and shows you what amount goes to principal, what amount goes to interest, and it just keeps a running total of your balance that you still owe at that point. And how much, tells you how much your total payment is. So you can get it, you can just see the years, but I clicked the little plus sign next to 2020 to have it broken down by month. In fact, on your project, you're going to need to do that too. Okay, so let's figure out, you see how it says the payment there is $2,474.25 for that dream home they did not qualify for? Let's figure that out ourselves. Let's first use this formula and do it. And then we'll do it a little easier with the amortization table in the book. On your project, you can do it either way. You can either use the table in the book or you can use this formula. So I'll show you both ways. P is the principal, R is the interest rate as a decimal, T is the amount of time in years. Plug all those in, you'll spit out your payment. Alright, so still talking about the Changs. They were applying for a $275,000 mortgage. So that's the P for the principal. And this was going to be at a 9% interest rate, so we put 0.09. It's going to divide it by 12 because there's 12 months in a year, trying to get a monthly interest rate. And then 1 plus 0.09 over 12 raised to the 12 times T, and this was going to be a 20-year mortgage, so T is 20. And that's over 1 plus 0.09 over 12 raised to the 12 times 20 minus 1. There are mathematicians that came up with this formula. We do not need to worry about how it's derived. Just know how to plug stuff in and work it out. You do not need to memorize that formula. If it's ever needed on a test, it will be provided. All right, let's work it out. You have to think about our order of operations. So as I'm simplifying numerator, simplifying denominator, I'll do those things first before I divide. Remember, please excuse my dear Aunt Sally. Make sure you take care of what's in the parentheses. Make sure you do exponents, multiplication, division from left to right, addition, subtraction from left to right. All right, so up top, we have 275,000. We're timesing it by the 0.09 over 12. We're timesing that. So in the parentheses there, we can do 0.09 divided by 12, and then we can go ahead and add the 1, so that we get 1.0075. And that's going to be raised to the 12 times 20, or 240. That's how many payments you're going to be making, 240 payments. So over that course of that time, they're going to be, the monthly interest is if you do 1.0075 times your principal over and over again, it's helping with the monthly interest. On the bottom, that parenthesis looks about identical, so it's going to be 1.0075 to the 240, and that's going to be minus 1 down there. Okay, and this is where it gets a little messy. I say don't round until the very end. What is 1.0075 raised to the 240th power? This is where you get like a nice messy decimal. 6.0091511524. Okay. All right, I'm going to go ahead and take care of the work across the top there. Hopefully I didn't mistype anything. If I did, I'll find out in a minute because I know what the payment's supposed to look like. And subtract 1 on the bottom. You're just going to get 5.0091511524. And then divide that. To get the monthly payments. And I get 2474.246379. We're talking about money, so we'll go ahead and say $2,474.25. So that's how you can get the monthly payment. You'll notice too, like if you go ahead and do these schedules online, you'll see the monthly payment be the same, but sometimes at the very end, the monthly payment is a little less. And that's just because of the way this formula works out. Sometimes when the way you have to round, like just now how we had to round up to 25 cents, over time you might end up paying a little more. Then, I mean, you're not going to be able to pay 0.246379. You're paying 2.25. So since you're paying slightly more over time, and the fact that, you know, you're paying more towards principal sooner, it might affect a little bit your very last payment. You might not owe quite that amount on the very last payment. So don't be surprised if that happens when you get to payment 240 and it's slightly less. All right, and I did say that there was another way to do it. This chart has interest rates and numbers of years, and it tells you the monthly payment per $1,000 of mortgage. So if I look up the Jang's situation, their mortgage is $275,000, and I need the interest rate. That's 9%, or I don't even need to change that to a decimal. I just need to know that's 9%, and it's going to be for 20 years. So if I look on this chart, if I look I have the rate. If I look up the rate column of 9%, and I go over to, or the rate row is 9%, and I go over to the 20-year column, I get a number that's 8.99726. Well, this is saying that you're paying this amount per $1,000 a mortgage. So I would take this amount, the 8.99726, and I would multiply that by 275, because they have a $275,000 mortgage. That's 275 1,000s. So I take the 275 times the 8.99726, and I get 2474.2465. Which, if you compare up there, pretty dang close. That was 0.246379, so it's not exactly the same as the payment formula, but it's pretty close. So again, like on your project, I have you guys doing a dream home. Some of you are picking multi-million-dollar dream homes, and that's perfectly fine. That's awesome. It's fun. But you might notice that there might be a little difference between your payment formula or this mortgage table in the book, or between one of those and what they're finding online. And that's okay, because it's just different points of rounding, depending on what method you use, can have a bigger effect the bigger your loan. So if you're taking out like a $10,000 loan, you're not going to notice it so much. But if you're taking out a $10 million loan, you'll notice. So that's just something to keep in mind. All right. So that was a little bit about making a payment. Next I was going to break down about the principal and interest. Because you know how earlier for the Jangs, I had given you this printout from the hsh.com site. I went ahead and clicked on the little plus sign, and it broke down per month what the principal and interest were from that total payment. And the very neat thing about this is that actually boils down to I equals PRT. So back to their principal amount, $275,000. Their rate is 9%. Their time is 20 years. And we want to see, well, what happens? How do these payments break down? Well, month one, you haven't had the loan for 20 years yet, so you're not going to have to pay 20 years of interest yet. At the end of month one, you're just going to pay the interest on that is accumulated through that month. And this is found using I equals PRT. At that point in time, your principal is $275,000. That's what you just took out your loan for. The rate is 9% yearly. But since only 1 month has passed, that's only 1/12 of a year. It's not been a whole year. It's only been 1/12 of a year. So at the end of the month, how much interest do you owe net right now? Well, 275,000 times 0.09 times 1/12. And we get $2,062.50. And you go back and look at this nice little printout. Notice that in January, it's $2,062.50 interest. Now, how much went to the principal? Not very much, because your payment, so the principal, take your payment amount of $2474.25 and subtract that amount that just went to interest. And you get $411.75. Pretty sad, isn't it? If you go back and look at that chart again, sorry if I'm making any of you dizzy. Notice the principal there for January, $411.75. Go over and look at the balance, and it went down by $411.75. So the new balance is $275,000 minus $411.75. So what does that equal? So that equals $274,588.25. So come along month 2, you don't owe $275,000. At that point in your loan, it's $274,588.25 times 0.09 times 1/12. So what does that come out to? It comes out to $2,059.41. I'm not going to scroll back up because I'm pretty sure some of you are getting dizzy. But if you scroll back up on that chart, in the month of February, it indeed says the amount of the payment that went towards interest is $2,059.41. So the amount of the payment that went to principal, take the payment amount still the same payment amount the whole time. The total payment's the same. It's just how the payment's divvied up changes. And this formula is so neat because it's magical. Because to me, it's magical. You're paying the same payment the whole time, all those years. And each month, you're paying more and more off in principal. Less and less goes to interest as your balance dwindles. But yeah, it works out that the payments are all the same. And it all works with I equals PRT each month. Okay, so I need to be quiet and actually do my math here. So subtract the amount that went towards interest in month 2. And what do I got left? So $414.84. If you look at the HSH one, it says $414.83. Again, that comes down to a slight difference in rounding with their formulas they use. Not a big deal. I'm not too concerned on your project if there's a penny difference. It has nothing to do with your math in this case. It just has to do with how things are rounded. So new balance now is the 588.25 minus the 414.84 that just went towards the balance. So the balance at this point is $274,173.41. In month 3, you would use $274,173.41 as your principal times 0.09 times 1/12 to get how much of the payment that month goes towards interest. Subtract the interest from the payment to see how much goes towards the balance, the principal. And you just do this over and over and over again. So your balance will keep dwindling because each month you're paying more. As you pay more principal, pay off the balance more, you're going to owe less interest each month. So I'm going to have you guys, look at this. In your dream home, you're going to do a 15-year mortgage and you're going to do a 30-year mortgage. So you're going to have calculations for both. You're going to calculate your payments, just like we did earlier with the formula, or you can use, if the table will work for you in the book, you can use that. Show all your work. And then you're going to show the breakdown for both the 15-year and the 30-year mortgages. What does the first month's principal and interest look like? Show your work with I equals PRT. Then explain how months 2, 3, 4, etc. work. And then I have you look at it and try to determine when is the balance halfway paid off. You might assume it's halfway through the loan, but take a look at your, like when you go on to like hsh.com or whatever your favorite bank site is, when you actually look at the running balances on there, see when it's halfway paid off. It might surprise you. You're going to be asked that. You're going to be asked to look at that. You're also going to be asked to look at what your total interest was in the end. And you're going to look at the difference between your 15-year and your 30-year. So like at the end, and if you're paying payments of $24.74.25, and you're paying those, what did we say? 20 years, right? So 20 years times 12 months a year, that's 240 payments. Equals, how much did you pay for this house? We figured this out earlier, I think. But in the end, you end up with $593,820 there. But what was the initial loan amount? Well, the initial loan amount was the $275,000. So when you subtract that, you'll see the interest paid over the life of the loan. So there's that. It's sobering. Because you're paying the $275,000 loan amount back plus the fees of $318,820 for having that mortgage. In this case, it's a 9% interest rate, super high. But still, they could have purchased almost 2 additional houses for that interest paid. But I'm going to ask you to compare those on your project too. For a 15-year, what was the interest paid over the loan life? For a 30-year, then subtract and see what the difference is. You're going to be amazed at the difference between having a shorter loan versus a longer loan. Yeah, the payments will be different because in a shorter time you got to pay it off faster, so you're going to have to pay more each month. But the interest total will be sobering. That's something to think about too. You might not be able to afford higher monthly payments when you buy a house, but you might want to throw everything you can at trying to pay higher payments as you go. Send in extra. Make sure too that if you do that they don't try to apply the extra to your next month's payment. Make sure you make it very clear with them that that's supposed to go towards the principal. Like sometimes you have to, depending on how it's set up, like you might have to actually send them a note and say, apply this to my principal or something, to my balance. So be careful with that. I find that I run into that problem with student loans, that if I set up my monthly payment automatically, then if I go in and try to pay a bigger payment, they'll just reduce my payment the next month. So I don't do automatic payments with them. I go in and manually on the website pay extra, because I can go in there and tell them, apply this month this much extra, and then the following month they'll still just charge me the same payment amount. So that's something you just have to be really careful with your terms and how they have everything set up. With mortgages, they'll also have an option. They'll say, hey, pay bi-weekly. In other words, pay every 2 weeks. That sounds cool, because if you think about it, there's 52 weeks in a year. Bi-weekly means that you're going to have 52 divided by 2, which is 26 payments. And that's 26 half payments. So that ends up being 13 full payments versus 12 full payments if you just pay once a month. And that's cool. But often they'll charge you a fee to do that. So honestly, the easiest thing to do to me, if they're going to charge you a fee to set that up for convenience, don't do it. Just pay your monthly payment and then figure out, well, how much would I need to pay? Well, what's my payment? Divide that by 12 and pay that a little bit extra each month. And by the end of the year, it'll be an extra full payment without having to pay a fee for the bi-weekly setup. Yeah, they'll get you in all kinds of ways. So be very careful reading your documents and seeing what all the hidden fees are and everything. All right. I think that mostly covers what we needed for that. I'm trying to think about your project, how it's broken down. But yeah, it's like, have you guys researched your dream home? You're going to supply the ad so I can sit there and drool and dream too. You're going to do some research on a bank, and you're going to provide a documentation of what the bank's advertising for loan rates. You do not need to go in and start qualifying for a loan. Do not sign up. Do not give personal information. Banks have it posted on their websites what the current rates are. That's all I'm asking you to provide. Then you're going to do your own calculations. You're going to assume a 20% down payment. Figure out what the down payment is. Make sure you subtract that from the selling price before you try to do your mortgage numbers. So many people make that mistake. Don't subtract the down payment first. The down payment's paid up front. It is not part of the mortgage loan. So then you figure out, well, how much is the mortgage loan going to be? So selling price minus down payment. I am not asking you to worry about points or insurance or taxes or anything on your project. So do not worry about that stuff. Just keeping it kind of simple. You're going to use either the payment formula or the table in your book, and you're going to calculate your monthly payment. Show all work. You're going to calculate first month's principal and interest. Show all work. I should see I equals PRT being used correctly. You're going to explain what happens for the breakdown for months 2, 3, 4, etc. Be detailed in your explanation. Do not, if you just use like a 10-word sentence, you probably haven't said enough. You're going to do printouts for your 15-year. You're going to do this for both 15-year and 30-year loans on your house. You're going to do printouts for 15-year and 30-year, showing me at least the breakdown for 1 year. So I should be able to look at your printout and compare that with your math and immediately see if you have it correct or not. I am not interested in sitting here and recomputing all of your math. When I'm grading this, should be able to look at your printout from the computer, compare it to your math, and immediately see that you did it correctly. Show all your work. If I can't do that, I probably won't grade it. So there you go. And you're going to look at your total interest amounts, which we did too today. You're going to compare the 15-year to 30-year, so subtract and see what the difference is. And you're going to have a small discussion at the end about which loan you choose and why. And make sure that, I don't care which loan you're choosing, but make sure that the reasons are sensible and use information that you just learned. So So, check out that project. Make sure you get started on that as soon as you can, because it takes a little bit of time. Don't wait until the last minute to do that one. Students too often wait till the last minute and turn it into garbage. Please don't do that. I want to have fun grading this. I want to see what your dreams are. I want to see, what your thought processes are as far as which loan you would choose and so forth. Okay. Just a couple of notes to end here. I mentioned adjustable rate mortgages earlier. Again, you can read about them a little bit in your book. I'm not going to get into them. Monthly payment remains the same for a period of time, while the interest rate may fluctuate. Then at the end of that period of time, they're going to adjust your monthly payment based on what happened with the interest rates fluctuations. So you do not have the same payment for the life of the loan, and that can be bad, because if you start out at a low interest rate and suddenly it fluctuates to a high interest rate, you're suddenly paying a higher monthly payment. They can base the rates on the current rates of a treasury bill or on the index set by the Federal Home Loan Bank Association. If you hear them talking about the Feds and the Treasury and interest rates, this is why it's important, because it dictates things about like what you're paying on your mortgages or what you're paying on your student loans or other types of loans. In that kind of a loan, you might see these definitions. The add-on rate or margin is a percent they'll add to the treasury bill rate to give you what actual interest rate they're going to charge you. There can be a rate cap to set how high the interest rate can go. So at least there's that. There can be a periodic rate cap, which only limits the interest rate for a specific period. Not as good as a general rate cap. Aggregate rate cap limits the interest rate change for the life of the loan, which is hopefully going to be kind to people. Payment cap can limit the monthly payment rather than the interest rate. So all those things you have to consider if you're going to do an adjustable rate mortgage, whether it's going to be something you can handle or not as it fluctuates. Other kinds of mortgages, I was talking about my house earlier. We went through the FHA, Federal Housing Administration. We had a loan through them. We didn't have a down payment, but nowadays you'll probably still have a down payment. It's just lower. But it also includes an FHA insurance premium. So we did have to pay a certain kind of insurance for a good amount of time. Then finally received notice years into the loan that, you've reached past the point of having to pay this insurance, so we won't charge that to you anymore. So then our mortgage payment looked like it went down a little bit. The VA, if you're a veteran, there's loans available through them that are guaranteed through them. Often there's no down payment, no insurance premium, but that depends. So if you're a veteran, check into the VA, see what they've got to offer you. There's graduated payment mortgages where they might start you out with a smaller mortgage payment, but if your mortgage payment's too small to cover the interest not paid will still get added. So eventually your mortgage payment will go up and you will still be responsible for whatever interest hasn't been paid at that point. Balloon payment mortgage, for a short period of time, you just pay interest. Then at the end of it, you pay the entire principal. Sometimes, I remember when flipping houses became a big thing back before the housing bubble first burst back in 2008 or whatever it was. It's a while back. These were kind of popular with people who were flipping houses because they figured, we'll take out this kind of mortgage, get the house fixed up and only pay interest on it for this short period of time, turn around and sell it, and then pay off the whole principal after we sell it. In the balloon payment mortgages before it's due, or hopefully before it's due, but maybe when it's due. When the housing bubble burst, there were too many people with these kinds of mortgages who then could not sell their houses for enough to recoup the costs. They weren't able to flip them like they wanted to. So then they were stuck with these mortgages, and that was part of the foreclosures at that time. I know where I live, Point Siena, had like the highest rate of foreclosures in the nation in that area. And there were a lot of people trying to flip houses there because houses were notoriously nicely priced. But suddenly these flippers couldn't pay off their mortgages. So Then next thing you know, you got all these houses that are being foreclosed on. But it's something to think about. More terms that you might see if you're trying to buy a house. Equity is the difference between how much your home is worth and how much is owed on the mortgage. So hopefully you have positive equity. Negative equity means you owe more than it's worth. That's not fun. I've been there. Positive equity is great. That means when you sell it, you might get a profit. Or some people can use that towards taking out another loan, maybe to make home improvements or something, or pay off some other bills. Then that's where you get home equity lines, or you can get second mortgages. You can use, if the home has equity, you can use that and borrow against it. And then often the interest involved is used as a tax deduction. But of course, always talk to your bank or credit union to get more information. They can give you all the deets, and you can make your decisions from there. All right, I think that's all I wanted to talk about for now with home mortgages. I just want to reiterate too that everything I talked about here, you can pretty much also apply to your car loans. Like some of you might be like, I'm not buying a house right now, but I'm going to buy a car. Car loans are very similar as far as the amortization, the payment formula, how the principal and interest are broken down per payment, I equals PRT. The math's all the same. It's just your car loans are usually a lot less than a house loan. The interest rates are usually different, and the time period is usually different. Usually car loans are like 3 years or 5 years or 6 years, not 30 years. Hopefully not. Please don't do a car loan for 30 years. That would be terrible. Cars depreciate as soon as you drive them off the lot. So that's something, like if you're going to buy a car, if you know this math inside out, you'll be able to understand your car loan better too. So it's 2 for the price of 1. So any of these amortized type loans. All right, and I guess the moral of the story, try to pay it off faster. That way you pay less interest in the life of the loan. Thank you for joining me. Hope you enjoyed this, and I look forward to seeing your projects. I actually do enjoy talking about this kind of math, and I really like to see what each of you has as your dream. It'll be interesting. So